Hi there, and welcome to Pause to Reflect, a podcast, or a dogcast, if you will, all about, you guessed it, dogs. Hear inspiring stories of everyday people working with extraordinary dogs and how these dogs help their person in authentic and compelling ways. We will hear from the experts in their fields, including veterinarians, animal behavioralists, trainers, groomers, and so many more. We'll also be delving into the exciting world of competitive canine sports, some of which you may never have heard of. I'm your host, Barbara Ann, so grab your bowl of treats and get ready to have a reason to smile today. Because dogs. Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Pause to Reflect. Today's guest is Tracy Ryan of First Responder Therapy Dogs. The mission of the First Responder Therapy Dogs is to lead the way in addressing behavioral health needs by providing emotional support to first responders. These first responders include firefighters, police, 911 dispatchers, EMTs, and paramedics. Hi, Tracy. Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us today. Please tell us more.
Thank you, Barbara. So First Responder Therapy Dogs is a newer group. They're a little over a year old now. And it was kind of an interesting time frame to start the group. The group's founder is Heidi Carmen out in California. And so she really started the group, to be honest with you, with her one dog who just loved to visit first responders, particularly firefighters at the time. And from there, so since it started in January of 2021, with one dog and one dog team, we're up to about 45 dog teams currently nationally, and that's in 9 different states. And really the whole concept is so simple. It's meant to, the whole group, the mission and everything around the mission of the group is to address the behavioral health needs by providing emotional support to first responders with the use of therapy dogs. And it's one of those niches of people that oftentimes people just don't think about. And it's an interesting kind of grouping of people. A lot of the groups that have certified through First Responder Therapy Dogs are either first responders themselves or spouses of first responders or somehow connected to the population themselves, which is, I think, where the kind of the niche support comes from, you know?
Right. I work at a public safety complex, and I am married to a fire chief who's now retired. And I get to bring my dogs, one at a time, of course, because they have to take turns, but they get to help the helpers. What a concept, right? What never ceases to amaze me is the impact a dog can have just by being a dog. Our dispatchers look forward to seeing them. The firefighters and police come by my office to visit the dogs, and even the ambulance crew looks forward to seeing them. They get kind of bummed if I don't bring the dogs. Dogs seem to have a way of changing the energy of a room simply by walking in the door. And, of course, they love all that attention that they get.
It's interesting because as much as, you know, the dog obviously gets a lot of attention, which for most therapy dogs, they love it. You know, they that is their jam. That's why they do what they do. It is actually interesting too in a day and age where people are on their phones all the time and they're connected, but not really connected to people. When you do bring the dog, especially in those environments, and there is just a certain air that changes and they talk amongst each other and they almost giggle, to be honest with you. I mean, it's so light and airy for the most part. And it honestly is just a break that I think is so necessary, but probably very neglected on some level for most departments because they're just usually with their downtime. They, are usually, again, doing stuff around the firehouse or around the police station or wherever they are, or they're, kind of in their own little area. They're not necessarily interacting with each other. They're not necessarily, kind of getting that emotional release that the dog just naturally provides.
Right. Tracy, tell me how you got involved. I know Heidi is the founder and she's out in California. How did this happen for you?
So it is kind of an interesting story. So my husband is also a firefighter. The mental health needs of that area of work, I've always been very aware of. I'm a high school guidance counselor. So mental health and mental health awareness has always been something for me that's been part of my job and just kind of part of who I am. When we had gotten our dog Sparky, 2 years ago, I always knew I wanted to train a therapy dog. And obviously I was hoping that it was a good fit for her. And we went through all the obedience and, we were getting to a point where I could kind of see the vision coming to play. And to be honest with you, before I found the group, I actually was planning on training her to come to school with me every now and then. And that was kind of the niche that I was thinking made the most sense. And she does do that every now and then here and there. But I actually was really struggling with finding something when you do a therapy dog team, you're volunteering your time. And it was important to me to find something that was connected to our family in some capacity and really something that incorporated my kids and my husband and just who we are as a family. And I happened to be Googling, to be honest, and I came across first responder therapy dogs. And the whole thing just clicked for me when I read the description of the group. And at that time, it was really only a California-based group. So I had reached out to Heidi immediately, and I kind of asked her, to be honest, if there was a group that she knew in this area that did the same thing in this side of the United States. And when she wrote back to me, her response was priceless. She basically said, we're the only ones in America that do it. And so I said to her, well, have you ever considered opening up your certification process to dogs outside of California? I said, I don't know what that looks like or how it works. And she had just started kind of that process. So we were actually the first dog team outside of the group she knew and, kind of internally could vet a little bit that went through the certification process. And we were the first East Coast team. So it was really actually an exciting it's been really an exciting journey as part of the group and part of such an early on group, because we've really been able to be a part of it growing and expanding, which has been awesome on our end. And the nice part about it is Heidi has done a great job in terms of entrusting us to make it our own out in this side of the United States. They obviously have a lot more need in the wildfire areas and things of that nature. So for the East Coast, the need is a little bit different. So we've really been able to kind of customize it to what the need is in this area and make our own connections out here. And it honestly has been one of the most enjoyable experiences I have ever had the pleasure of being a part of. And I'm so fortunate to be able to have the dog that allows me to do it. But it's something that makes our family very connected to a group of people that we were already connected to just through my husband's job. And like I said, a lot of the groups that are certified as of now are either first responders themselves or related to, and that's for a reason and not on purpose. It's just, and I think you can understand from being the wife of a firefighter, there's something about seeing and talking and hearing from the other person what they went through in a daily shift, and as basic as a shift can be to the most extreme of the shifts, it's all very stress induced on some level, and from the minute that they get a call in the middle of the night to the way the tone goes off in the middle of the night to just their everyday occurrence. So it's one of those things that the little break that we're able to give them, it honestly is so fulfilling to me. It's something Sparky truly enjoys to do. Like she looks forward to our visits every single weekend we go out. And it's something that honestly I'm able to kind of show my children in terms of, giving back. And also my husband couldn't be prouder because she's the daughter he never needed. In all honesty,
Yes, it's about as expensive too.
It absolutely is. Yep.
Are there any instances that stick out in your mind where you knew for certain that this program really is working and helping people?
So we've had a couple of very unique experiences, and it's one of those things that oftentimes I don't necessarily get a lot of information ahead of time. So one particular department who we actually had never visited before, a lot of it's done through social media, which is kind of the positive, I guess, to social media. We're able to connect with a lot of people that honestly wouldn't know about the group otherwise. So I had a person reach out to me through Instagram, and she had just kind of explained that her fiance was going to be having his last shift coming up. He was a firefighter as a result of colon cancer treatment. And she had just kind of said, it would be really nice if you'd be able to visit on his last shift. And so I didn't know anything about the firefighter. I didn't know anything about him other than his name. And oftentimes when we visit, we don't actually make a lot of introductions by name. Sparky does kind of all the talking and all the work, and they immediately gravitate to her. And oftentimes they don't even know my name sometimes, it's more just about the dog. So we went through the whole visit, and we were able to interact with probably 30 different firefighters on that particular shift. And when I left the shift, I actually wrote a message back to the woman, and I said, listen, I really hope we were able to see him. I think it went really well. Let me know. I'm wishing you all the best. And she actually wrote back to me and sent me a picture of his face. And I said, I have to tell you this. And I said, and maybe it's just luck. I don't know. But I said, Sparky does not actually typically give a lot of kisses when we visit. She just tends not to. It was the only person out of 35 firefighters that she gave 3 kisses to in that one visit. And he actually had facial hair, which I actually said to the woman is actually something she doesn't like that much of. And she just wrote back and she was just floored. And to be honest, it just left me with a feeling of their instincts, and whether it's sheer coincidence or whether they honestly know, I have no idea, but it is magical. When those types of moments happen, it is truly magical. And we've had a couple very interesting little occurrences like that over the course of the time. And, we've had groups that have said afterwards, we just needed it today. And I always joke around that her leash leads me to wherever we visit, day to day. Because we have some departments that we just kind of visit when we have time, and then we have others that schedule through us. So the ones that we just happen to pop into, again, we've had more firefighters and more police officers and more dispatch people that have just kind of said, I lost someone a day ago, and for whatever reason, she gravitates to that one person that particular time we visit. And a lot of the people we see are the same, depending upon the location, we see them regularly. So she gets to know people too. And it's funny because every time we'll go, even if we went to the same place 5 shifts in a row, she tends to gravitate to different people every shift we go to. And I don't know if that's because she just kind of senses a difference in them or a stress level in them, but it is ironic how many people will come up to me after the fact that I don't know about prior to, and they just kind of say, you have no idea how needed that was today, and it really is. It's just an unexplainable moment that you kind of share with somebody else. And like I said, she is a dog that, and they all are in their own way, that I truly believe she has a sense about her that just knows. And Heidi has said the same thing about her dog, Kareth. And I would say that every team probably says the same thing about their animal. They just walk in and they strut in and they know they're going to get lots of love, but there's something about certain people that they want to give extra love to. And there's no defining it.
Not being able to define it yet, witnessing such clear evidence of the effect dogs have is a pretty familiar theme. To me, it's one of the most amazing things about animals in general. You said in your email that you traveled various places throughout Massachusetts. You're also one of a few teams, is that correct?
So we currently have 3 teams in Massachusetts. So we're slowly and surely expanding. We've got a couple more in the works. But anywhere I have the privilege of visiting, and it's been interesting because we've done some bigger events, Sparky and I and my whole family. I've trucked them all to, we've been able to do events at the TD Garden and Fenway that have been first responder based events for various charities. And it's been nice because we've been able to obviously provide some support in a very unique way, but it's also been part recruitment and part information sharing because, it's one of those things that the departments that have gotten to now know us and are used to the visits and just, I think they very quickly reach out when they need something. For departments who maybe aren't as familiar with it or just have not necessarily had the experience quite yet, a lot of times it's one of those things that you don't need it until you need it. I try to spread my information around enough where if they ever needed something, that they knew who to call for just an added level of support. Obviously, a dog can't fix all problems, but it is one of those kind of tiered interventions, so to speak, that doesn't cost a department any money. It's something that typically I've never had one person not like it, to be honest with you. And it's just an added little bonus. So we've had the opportunity to go up to the North Shore. We were in Boston for, an officer suicide that we had gotten a call to visit a department as a result of. So, we've traveled when the need is there. Ideally, I'd love to have teams in every crevice of Massachusetts. I mean, that is my long-term goal.
I vote for that too.
Yes. And that's really, like I said, I joke with anyone who says they have a dog that, they might be interested. I go, you just keep me posted because we've got a vest.
Count me in. I'd love to do that. I kind of do it now just by bringing my own dogs into our station. First Responder Therapy Dogs is a nonprofit 501c3, isn't it?
Yep, it is. They actually just went through the process of becoming a national nonprofit, which is very exciting in terms of that side of things.
So what does being a nonprofit mean?
So the logistics are one of those things that I don't know exactly the specifics, but essentially from a fundraising perspective, the group is completely donation based, and everyone volunteers their time, but there is still expense that goes into kind of funding the group and, getting the group out there. Is in particular with the wildland fire side of things. Again, that they travel a lot longer for those. They go for days at a time, and the environment is very different out there for that. So in terms of funding and being able to fundraise, the national nonprofit kind of status allows them to fundraise in a very different way and hit a much larger population of people versus just being kind of contained to the California state.
So those funds do not go towards training. It's up to each individual to fund their own training, correct?
Yep. So everything is completely owner driven, and the certification process starts with the dog, obviously being a certain age, just kind of getting through the adolescence of puppyhood and that kind of thing. So usually 18 months is the general rule of thumb to start off with. And then they have to pass what's called the Canine Good Citizenship Test. And every dog is very different. So Sparky obviously started training when she was just a baby. Some dogs certify later in life. So they sometimes are already through kind of those puppy stages that you would normally kind of work through naturally. So for Sparky, it took about 2 years to certify and to pass that test. But depending upon the age of the dog, sometimes it can be a little bit quicker than that.
And depending on their training too. From what I understand, the Canine Good Citizen, they have 10 milestones that they must accomplish. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep. It's a 10-point test that they have to do without treats. And that's similar to any type of, whether it's the teacher's test or paramedic license, or it's the national kind of evaluation of dog behavior, essentially. So it's kind of a standardized test, so to speak, of dog behavior, and making sure, obviously, from a manners perspective, that they have those basics. Even in terms of, it looks at how they interact with other dogs, as well as just groups of people, stimulus, that kind of thing.
First Responder Therapy Dogs are not breed specific, correct?
It is not breed specific. No, it's really, and some are, not this particular group, but there are groups out there that are breed specific. No, First Responder Therapy Dogs really focuses on the personality of the dog. So part of the evaluation process is also evaluating them in different circumstances and around different stimuli. Because, they do have to be comfortable with, it's a very different environment. And for anyone who has ever been at a fire station or a police station or a dispatch, between the noises, the sounds, the movement, everyone is kind of up and moving. And it's a much more different experience than any other type of therapy work that you would do.
In your email, under your signature line, I noticed that it was written that you were dog, BONES certified. What is that?
Sure. So a lot of the dogs are actually dual certified. So Dog Bones is a Massachusetts-based dog group that also therapy certifies. So as a result of that certification, I'm able to bring her to school with me. We could visit nursing homes, things of that nature. There are other dog teams that also have kind of equivalent groups in their particular state that they live. So First Responder Therapy Dogs is a nationally based group. Each state, though, oftentimes also has kind of internal groups that are smaller that work within that state a little bit differently. We also have a couple of dogs that are also certified as service dogs. So there's one particular dog team that the dog is the owner's service dog for a specific medical condition, as well as then also certified therapy dogs. So they all kind of have their own specific niches. A lot of them do, there are some dog teams that do a lot of outreach with veterans and with people who have, PTSD and things of that nature. There's dog teams that, work at airports as well, on on the side. So a lot of them kind of have, based on the owner's interest and also obviously what the owner then currently does, they do kind of some side stuff in addition to the first responder stuff.
Have you noticed if there's a particular age for the dogs in which their capability for service is best?
Typically 18 months is the earliest that they can certify. And then honestly, there hasn't been a dog, because the group is new. There hasn't been a dog to kind of age out, if that makes sense. Kareth is 4 out in California, the one Heidi's dog who started it, and Sparky is going to be turning 3 in a few weeks actually. But the age range really varies, and it really is dog driven on that. I mean, there are therapy teams just in general that we follow that the dogs work all the way up until kind of the end. I hate to say it that way, but but they love it and they're happy doing it, and it gives them purpose and everything else. Obviously, there are others that cut it short just with regards to maybe their medical health and conditions and things of that nature. So you do have to kind of really gauge. And that's even from a visit perspective. It's interesting. I don't even have to look at a clock anymore to know when she's at her 1.5 to 2 hour mark. It's funny. Like, all I have to do is kind of look in her eyes, and I can kind of tell just by her mannerisms that she's tired, and that, we kind of start to wrap it up.
It's so funny how they communicate.
Oh, they don't have to say a word, and you know them very well,
If someone wishes to join first responder therapy dogs, how would they begin?
I will say there's inquiries constantly. I mean, there's a lot of interest. I think it's a matter of just, people finding it to be the niche that works for them and their dogs. So the ones who actually get through the certification process. But I will say, since they've started to kind of expand the process, they have grown exponentially. So we certified in August of this past year with first responders. At that point, I want to say we were the 13th team or 12th team. So obviously since August, they're up to about 45 now. And I would say probably 7 to 10 are right in the process still of going through. So, again, the growth has been very exponential. And it's become kind of word of mouth. So I've met people through kind of social media platforms. I've met people, obviously, when we do our visits and when we communicate and do our larger scale things. And every team that's kind of connected and certified does similar work with that. So, it is interesting, because as soon as people kind of get to know what they do, and all of a sudden they're like, my dog would be really good at that. And, before they know it, they're emailing and getting the certification information. And that's how I've kind of even worked with the teams in Massachusetts. It's been through kind of word of mouth, and then they've asked a few questions and I've answered the questions and they're intrigued. Or sometimes they'll already be visiting like hospitals and things of that nature, which has a lot of similarity, in that sense. So it's a very easy transition for them to kind of sway it a little differently and go to more station visits too. So
your visits include fire stations, police stations, dispatch centers, any place else?
Ambulance locations. Yep, we do a lot with Brewster Ambulance in this area.
You only visit the stations, correct? You never go to any scenes?
Yeah, so that is a big distinction. There are crisis team dogs too. That different job, different group, and different certification process. The therapy dogs and first responder therapy dogs really bases their work directly with the first responders. So they're not working with kind of victims, so to speak, or people who have experienced traumatic events outside of a station. And they do tend to contain their visits more towards station visits or a location that's geared to that particular group of first responders. It's also a lot different for the dog. For the dogs that go to scenes and crisis response, it's just a very different vibe for the dog as well. And that tends to be a very different process to certify for that.
Right. So what exactly does someone need to do in order to join first responder therapy dogs?
So the first and foremost they would email first responder therapy dogs at gmail.com. So that's the group's email. And that's right on their website too. So it's firstrespondertherapydogs.org is the website. And then from there, depending upon where the dog is at, some general questions. So Heidi has a general form that people fill out that's just to kind of gather some information about, how old is the dog? Where is the dog at in terms of training? Obviously, dogs that are just starting to think about it, or dog teams that are just starting to think about and haven't actually certified and passed the test. That's going to be a much longer process than a dog. There have been a couple of dogs, like, for example, one of the both Massachusetts teams, they were actually already certified through Dog Bones of Massachusetts. So for that, it's a little bit quicker because they've already done kind of a lot of the work from a training perspective. And then once that's kind of evaluated and it makes sense in terms of we're going to move forward with the process, there's some online coursework for the owner to kind of get some of that information out of the way. And then there's some environmental kind of tests for the dog to make sure, like I said, that it's the right fit, the dog's comfortable, the setting is proper. And that really gives the owner a chance to make sure it's a comfortable setting for everyone involved, but just to make sure that if the dog does need to practice a little bit longer, that they have the opportunity to do so.
If you had a word of advice for someone who's on the fence, maybe this is something they would like to do, what would you say to them?
So I would first and foremost say do it. But the second piece would be, the beauty of it, and I would say this with any therapy dog team work that you do, is you really can adapt it to what you want it to be as well. So I would say, we do a lot of visits. Sparky and I do a lot of visits. It's something we're very passionate about. And for us, it works. It fits our family. It fits time frames. We tend to have early risers in my family. So I tend to get out early in a weekend and I'm back by 10 o'clock and we've done, a couple visits and we're all feeling good to start the day. There's other people that they tend to do it later at night or, in the afternoon or something like that. The beauty of it is it's very customizable and any little thing helps. So it's one of those things that even if you did one visit a month or 3 visits a month, there's no minimum, there's no expectation. It honestly is just something that you can do with it what you'd like to do with it and what makes you happy and what makes the dog happy and what's a good fit for kind of your current status. So that's the beauty of it. And that's the piece that if you think at all you'd be interested in it and you think the environment is something you'd be content with and happy with, and the dog would be a good fit, it's worth the certification process to have the opportunity to do it. It really is.
I agree wholeheartedly. Going back a bit before we go, I have to know this. You just get up in the morning, take your dog to the car, and decide from there where you're going? They don't specifically ask you to come?
So it's a little bit of both. So dispatch and certain police in particular, dispatch, they tend to be a little bit more schedule based because, we hit shift changes and we hit things that make the most sense for those particular environments. Police in particular. So we usually either hit the morning shift change or the afternoon shift change because once the shift change happens, a lot of times they're on the road and they're not necessarily at a desk somewhere. Dispatch, same thing. We try to kind of pack in as much as we can. So we usually will get there for kind of the last of one group shift, and then we stay into the next group shift to kind of tackle both sides of it. Fire departments tend to be a little bit more flexible, because they never know when they're coming and going. So it's one of those things that oftentimes we'll give them a call before we get, as we get in the car. And I have kind of a running rotation. I keep a big spreadsheet just so we play fair and there's no preference and we don't play favorites in any capacity. And I just honestly, I give them a call and say, do you want to visit this morning? And usually they're very excited and they can't wait to see us. But sometimes there will be a situation, they've got an open house or they're out and no one is at the station. So what we do is we just kind of go through our Rolodex and we go to a different group in a different station. And we do it that way for them. Same with Brewster Ambulance. We oftentimes I just pick a day that works for us and then we go and however many we see and, they've got dispatch and different groups and we mill around until we see enough people and then we're on our way. So it depends on the environment. And as we visit and as we get used to different stations, they all have their preferences, and kind of personality, so to speak. And everyone's chief is a little bit different or supervisor is a little bit different. So we kind of just adapt it to what works for them and what works for us as well,
Yes, that sounds about right. Well, thank you, Tracy, for your time. Lots of information, and I hope that someone out there finds it in them to say, yes, this is an awesome opportunity, and to have some fun and make a difference. And of course, be with your dog. If people would like to find you, your Facebook handle is at First Responder Therapy Dogs, and the website is www.firstrespondertherapydogs.org. I will go ahead and link these in the show notes as well. And if people have any questions, they can visit the website and see what you're all about, as well as donate if they wish.
Do. And like I said, all the donations go directly to the group. So, there's no third party or anything like that in that sense. And they all support the teams in terms of different areas and different needs. So it's very much appreciated.
Well, thank you, Tracy, very much for your time. And please tell Heidi that I said thank you. And I look forward to hearing about your group in the near future.
Thank you so much, Barbara. Have a wonderful night, and thank you so much for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Well, that wraps it up for this episode. I hope you enjoyed today's guest, Tracy Ryan of First Responder Therapy Dogs. Make sure you don't miss any further episodes by hitting that subscribe button and leaving a comment below. I hope you'll join us next time, too. Until then, have a wonderful week. Because dogs.